It all starts inside a bar, where we meet Tatiana. The young woman is texting Richie, who has already kept her waiting for quite a while. Seeing that he still hasn't shown up, she decides to start drinking while constantly checking her phone. A little later, Richie finally calls her and says he'd rather talk on the phone than keep texting. Apparently, the two met through a dating app, and this was supposed to be the first time they met in person. But the conversation takes a pretty weird turn when Richie suddenly asks her if she's black. Tatiana, who clearly doesn't take nonsense from anyone, fires back immediately and starts roasting him without holding anything back. The argument goes on for a moment until Richie tells her he's already outside in a nearby alley and asks her to come meet him. Without suspecting a thing, Tatiana heads over to the spot. But right then, Richie's voice suddenly changes and takes on the unmistakable tone of Ghostface. The killer tells her the worst part is that she knows a ton about horror movies and still had the brilliant idea of walking alone into a dark alley. But Tatiana doesn't seem impressed in the slightest. She fires back that the real bad decision was messing with a black girl in the first place. Then she gives a quick signal, and out of nowhere, an entire crew shows up ready to back her up. Seeing the massive group surrounding him, Ghostface jokes that they look like some kind of neighborhood Avengers. When he tries to attack Tatiana, something completely ridiculous happens. His knife bends the moment it hits her stomach. She proudly claims she's got abs on top of her abs, leaving the killer totally confused. A second later, the whole crew jumps Ghostface and starts beating him down until he's completely helpless. In the end, Tatiana grabs the knife herself and finishes him off, but someone had been watching the entire thing unfold. It's a young girl named Martina, an obvious parody of Wednesday Addams. As she watches everything happen, she comments that these kinds of movies just aren't her thing. Martina is talking on the phone when suddenly someone rings her doorbell. The person on the other end immediately warns her not to answer the door, saying it could be Ghostface. But she brushes off the warning, convinced they're being way too dramatic. So she opens the door without a second thought, and sure enough, it's Ghostface, who immediately stabs her. That's the setup for Scary Movie 6. We then cut to what seems like a perfectly normal day, where Sarah and Jack are having a casual conversation, but in the background, something completely absurd is happening. Amusement park rides keep exploding over and over again, while they continue talking as if nothing is wrong. Suddenly, Sarah gets a phone call. When she answers, she's told that Ghostface attacked her sister, and that she's currently in the hospital. As Sarah talks with Jack about going to see her, the rides keep blowing up behind them, yet neither of them seems to notice in the slightest. A little later, a kid shows up claiming he survived thanks to his lucky coin. Both the kid and the entire amusement park sequence are an obvious parody of Final Destination. Later, we meet Day Meeks, who gets dropped off at school by her mother, Brenda, along with her brother Brad. Meanwhile, Police Chief Greg Philippe is also taking his child, yes, to the same school. At the same time, Sarah and Jack finally arrive at Cindy's house, and we learn that Cindy is actually Sarah's mother. There, we discover that mother and daughter haven't spoken to each other in 6 years. Sarah explains that Ghostface has returned and is once again spreading chaos across the city. However, Cindy suddenly starts reminiscing about a bizarre Christmas when she took her daughter to meet Santa Claus. The problem is that this so-called Santa looked almost exactly like Art the Clown. Even more ridiculous, none of the parents noticed anything was wrong because they were all too busy staring at their phones. As a result, the kids ended up receiving gifts that were actually human body parts. Sarah tries to get her mother to stop rambling and focus on the real problem, finding Ghostface before he attacks more people. Eventually, she manages to convince her, and Cindy agrees to help. Meanwhile, Day Meeks, her brother Brad, and their friends gather to discuss the situation. Among them are Brad's girlfriend and Chief Greg's child as well. Together, they try to come up with a plan to figure out who's hiding behind the Ghostface mask. That's when Shorty shows up. Unlike his younger days, he's now become a full-blown crypto guru. Thanks to his investments and the live streams he does online, he's insanely rich. The problem is that the younger crowd barely pays attention to him. As soon as they hear that Martina has woken up, they ditch the meeting and immediately head out to see her. Meanwhile, Shorty casually leaves in his private jet. Meanwhile, Ray unexpectedly shows up at a church, where he's greeted enthusiastically by the entire congregation. There, he reveals that he's no longer gay, because according to him, God has saved him. The announcement leaves everyone stunned and sets up one of the most ridiculous moments in the movie. Elsewhere, Sarah and Jack arrive at the hospital to visit Martina. While they're there, Sarah accidentally takes some of the girl's medication and ends up completely drugged out. Under the influence, she starts doing increasingly ridiculous things. First, She disconnects her own sister from the machines, keeping her stable. A few moments later, a nurse walks into the room, but she's so distracted that she doesn't even notice what's happening and leaves without doing anything. Things get even worse when Sarah accidentally sends her sister's hospital bed flying across the room, causing it to slam straight into the hospital ceiling. Later, Sarah heads to the restroom to try and pull herself together, but that's when she receives a disturbing call from Ghostface. The killer tells her that he knows her family's secret. Sarah immediately recognizes the voice and realizes who's on the other end of the line. Seconds later, Ghostface appears right in front of her, ready to attack. But staying true to the franchise's absurd humor, the attack goes horribly wrong when he stabs a wall and gets his knife stuck in it. Desperate, Sarah begs the nurse for help, but the nurse completely ignores her because she just started her lunch break. Even so, just as Ghostface is about to deliver the final strike, the nurse finally steps in and manages to save her. Not long after, Sarah and the others decide to pay a visit to Doofy. The second he lets them in, he gives them a COVID test and then informs them they only have 8 minutes to talk to him. Doofy explains that he has no plans to get involved because he's way too busy. On top of that, he's convinced the pandemic is still going strong. When they tell him COVID ended years ago, he's completely blown away. Since he's spent all that time stockpiling insane amounts of food, he decides to give them some of his supplies and tells them to leave before Ghostface can track them down. However, when the group gets back home, they discover that Doofy has already changed his mind and decided to join the mission after all. Meanwhile, several of the younger kids have gathered at Sarah's house to figure out who's hiding behind the Ghostface mask. Cindy arrives as well, leading to an emotional reunion with Shorty after all these years. A little later, Brenda shows up too, and the legendary crew is pretty much back together. Right in the middle of all the chaos, another completely ridiculous moment takes place. They accidentally grab a gun, end up shooting a kid by mistake, and then, as if it were the most normal thing in the world, decide to bury him to avoid getting into trouble. After that, everyone tries to focus on the real issue again. The younger group starts analyzing every person in the room and comes to the conclusion that this new killer seems to be creating his own horror movie. Suspicion quickly falls on Sarah. However, Cindy immediately shuts that theory down. According to her, Ghostface isn't interested in the new characters. His real targets are the original survivors. And right at that moment, Ray shows up as well, finally completing the long-awaited reunion of the classic crew. Not long after, Ghostface calls Sheriff Greg and immediately starts mocking him. During the call, he asks about his own horror movie and then, without warning, tells him that by the time he gets home, his child will already be dead. Furious, the sheriff fires back that he doesn't have a daughter, he has a son. Without wasting a second, he rushes home in a panic to make sure everything is okay. But the moment he arrives, Ghostface appears out of nowhere and brutally attacks him. After stabbing him multiple times, the killer finishes him off in a ridiculously over-the-top way, then stands there mocking him until he finally stops responding. Meanwhile, Yes receives a call from the killer. Ghostface challenges him to one of his classic trivia games. He explains that if he gets an answer wrong, he dies. Yes manages to answer almost every question correctly, but forgets to mention one small detail involving Doofy. For Ghostface, that tiny mistake is more than enough. He tells Yes to look out the window, where several workers from his house are being taken away. But Yes is also watching everything through a security camera, convinced he's safe because he can clearly see Ghostface on the screen. However, the killer had already managed to get inside the house and ends up stabbing him. Not long after, Gail, the famous reporter, shows up. She first meets with Sarah to get information about the recent attacks, then heads over to see Doofy in hopes of uncovering some kind of clue. Meanwhile, Ghostface crosses paths with Shorty. Somehow, he manages to hypnotize him and put him into a bizarre trance-like state. Under its effects, Shorty starts recalling a strange moment from his childhood. He explains that one day, while walking home, he noticed a car parked outside his house. Something really weird was happening there. He saw his mother and tried to call out for help, but it felt like something was pulling him back and stopping him from moving. Then he witnessed a massive burst of water, and moments later, he saw a man dying. Once the story is over, Ghostface tells him to sink into his seat. Immediately, Shorty falls into what Ghostface proudly calls a K-pop hole. Out of nowhere, an outrageous K-pop musical sequence begins, parodying Demon Hunters. Everything turns into a ridiculous music video packed with impossible choreography, over-the-top dancing, and completely absurd situations. Eventually, Shorty snaps out of the hallucination and realizes that he was actually surrounded by a group of women the entire time. Meanwhile, Cindy is having a conversation with Bobby. She's convinced that everything she's been seeing is the result of some mushrooms she took earlier. Bobby, instead of reassuring her, simply tells her that she's going to die, all while wearing a huge smile on his face. The conversation comes to an abrupt end when the staff forces Cindy to leave because visiting hours are officially over. Meanwhile, Martina is sitting at home watching TV. She starts out watching the news, but after changing channels, she ends up finding an absurd parody of the 2026 Michael Jackson movie. While watching the show, she suddenly hears a suspicious noise somewhere inside the house. Convinced that something is wrong, she immediately goes on the defensive and prepares to attack any intruder who might be hiding there. A few moments later, Jack shows up, making Martina think it was all a false alarm, but the sense of relief doesn't last very long. Out of nowhere, Ghostface suddenly appears and launches his attack. Martina tries to defend herself by smashing Ghostface with a telephone. During the struggle, the killer accidentally breaks a nearby medication container, releasing a substance that causes both of them to start experiencing bizarre hallucinations. In the middle of the chaos, Martina takes advantage of the confusion and makes a run for it. Ghostface immediately goes after her, kicking off a chase through the entire building. When he finally catches up and is about to grab her, Sarah and Doofy show up just in time. Realizing he's been exposed, Ghostface decides to flee. Doofy stays behind with Martina and Sarah while they try to recover from the attack. However, the moment the others leave, the killer quietly returns, grabs Doofy, and ends up killing him. The most ridiculous part comes afterward. A nurse finds the body, but she doesn't even realize what happened. Thinking he's simply taking a nap, she orders Ghostface to clean up the area. Meanwhile, Shorty is hosting a live stream with several friends. Since he now considers himself a digital business expert, he's giving marketing and entrepreneurship advice to thousands of viewers. Right in the middle of the stream, they receive a call from Ghostface. Instead of being scared, everyone starts joking around with him. Things get even more ridiculous when Ghostface actually shows up, and they end up dancing together, repeating the classic "Waza!" and turning the whole conversation into some kind of game. But the comedy comes to a sudden stop when Ghostface kills one of the participants during the live stream, leaving the entire audience completely shocked. Meanwhile, the butler becomes one of the main suspects. The police arrive ready to arrest him and even bring a photograph they believe proves he's Ghostface. However, the entire operation turns into a complete disaster when they end up arresting the wrong person. At the same time, Gail visits a specialized clinic to undergo a treatment that directly parodies the events of the substance. And of course, that's exactly where Ghostface shows up again. The killer storms into the facility and starts attacking the medical staff in the most absurd ways imaginable. After that, he takes over the procedure himself and decides to administer Gail's injections while happily dancing around the room. As if that weren't enough, he also tampers with the massive machine containing the compound and pumps Gail with a ridiculously dangerous amount of it. The effects kick in immediately. As the transformation unfolds, the movie throws in a series of outrageous references and ridiculous conspiracy theories, including the supposed release of uncensored Epstein files. Everything spirals into pure chaos while Gail completely loses control of the situation. Finally, she looks into a mirror and discovers a blonde version of herself staring back at her in an obvious parody of white chicks. The shock lasts only a few seconds because Ghostface shows up once again and immediately attacks her. Later on, the story takes us to a Halloween party that features a brief parody of weapons. However, the biggest reference arrives shortly afterward, when the movie starts recreating an exaggerated version of the events from Scream 6. Everything takes place aboard a train. We see Dei riding along like it's a normal day, until Megan suddenly appears. As usual, she starts dancing in her weird robotic way, and performs several of her signature flips while slowly making her way closer. When she finally reaches Dei, she removes her mask and reveals a shocking truth: she's Ghostface. Without wasting a second, she stabs Dei, but the situation somehow becomes even more ridiculous. Dei tries to explain that she wants people to use specific pronouns when referring to her. An older woman witnessing the scene has absolutely no idea what Dei is talking about and ends up getting offended. As a result, she stabs Dei too. Then another passenger decides to do the exact same thing. Then another joins in, and another after that. Within seconds, practically the entire train car is taking part in the attack, turning the scene into one of the most absurd moments in the entire movie. Meanwhile, Shorty is having a conversation with his nephew. During the talk, he gives him several tips on how to impress his girlfriend and encourages him to try new things in the relationship. The problem is that the kid decides to follow Shorty's advice to the letter. Unfortunately for him, Shorty's tips are just as ridiculous as they are terrible. After trying one of the weirdest ideas his uncle suggested while he and his girlfriend are in bed, everything goes horribly wrong, and she immediately dumps him. Meanwhile, Brenda, Shorty, and Ray receive an unexpected visit. 3 white guys show up at the front door, claiming they strongly believe in equality, inclusion, and harmony among all people. To prove it, they start performing a song about friendship, gender equality, and peaceful coexistence. Despite all their good intentions, the group decides not to let them inside. At the same time, Sarah, Jack, and Martina arrive at the big Halloween party. Everything seems to be going fine until Sarah gets a call from Cindy. Her mother warns her that she needs to pick up her sister and leave the house immediately. According to Cindy, the place hides a dark past because years ago, it was the very house where Sarah's father murdered numerous people. But Sarah completely ignores the warning. Realizing her daughter has no intention of listening, Cindy decides to go there herself. Meanwhile, Brad, Jack's nephew, unexpectedly comes face to face with Ghostface. Convinced that he knows every rule in the horror movie playbook, Brad tries to defend himself using horror references and classic genre cliches. He even starts listing the usual slasher movie stereotypes, believing that somehow it'll help him survive. Naturally, none of it works. Ghostface takes him out without much trouble and continues moving through the house as chaos slowly starts spreading across the entire party. But before anything else can happen, Shorty ends up getting Ghostface high. Instead of fighting, the two start hanging out together, playing games, and acting like nothing dangerous is happening around them. A little later, Sarah shows up, causing Ghostface to temporarily leave the scene. The calm lasts only a few seconds. Out of nowhere, Brad's girlfriend appears claiming she found Brad outside the house covered in blood. However, before anyone can even react, she pulls out a gun and starts firing in every direction. Panic instantly takes over the party. The guests run for their lives, desperately trying to get to safety. Right in the middle of the chaos, Cindy arrives, completely confused about what's happening. Brenda rushes over and explains that someone has started shooting inside the house. At that exact moment, Brad's girlfriend appears again and fires directly at Brenda. Seeing Brenda collapse to the ground, Cindy believes she's been seriously wounded. With what seems to be her dying breath, Brenda begs Cindy to go inside the house and finally put an end to Ghostface once and for all. But the whole thing turns out to be a scam. Seconds later, it's revealed that Brenda was never hurt at all. She had actually used ketchup to fake the injury so she wouldn't have to go into the haunted house because she was way too scared to face the killer. With no other choice, Cindy decides to go in alone. As she searches room after room for Ghostface, she finds Shorty hiding out and doing everything he can to stay away from the danger. A little later, she runs into her daughter's boyfriend and briefly starts wondering if he could be the killer. Before she can figure out the truth, the real Ghostface suddenly appears and attacks her. The fight quickly spirals into complete chaos. During the struggle, both of them crash all the way down to the first floor of the house. Just when Cindy finally gets hold of a weapon and seems ready to finish the killer off for good, another Ghostface appears, then another one, and then another. The whole situation turns into absolute madness. Surrounded by multiple ghost faces at the same time, Cindy starts fighting all of them with ridiculously over-the-top moves, in a clear parody of the action scenes from Ballerina and the John Wick franchise. One by one, the fake killers keep dropping as Cindy fights without letting up. After a completely insane and over-the-top battle, she finally manages to take them all down. Sarah is just about to finish off one of the remaining ghost faces when Jack suddenly appears. At first, it looks like he's there to help her, but it quickly turns out that was part of the plan all along. Without any warning, Jack stabs her and reveals that he's been one of the killers from the very beginning. He then reminds her of one of the oldest rules in horror movies: never trust the boyfriend. A little later, Brad's girlfriend also unmasks herself, revealing that the two of them have been working together as Ghostface the entire time. The killers then drag Brenda in front of everyone. However, it doesn't take long for the truth to come out. Brenda was never actually injured. The whole shooting had been an act, and the blood was nothing more than ketchup. Just when Jack and Brad's girlfriend think they've won, a new Ghostface suddenly appears. Then another one. The newcomers immediately turn on the supposed victors and start stabbing them without mercy. After removing their masks, they reveal themselves to be Anthony Anderson and Shaq, who make an unexpected return for one of the most ridiculous moments in the entire movie. The two of them start complaining about how they've been forgotten and pushed aside for years. turning the big reveal into one giant meta-joke about the franchise itself. As a result, the final showdown becomes a parody of the endless killers and ridiculous plot twists that have become a trademark of the Scream series. Not long after, Ray and Shorty reveal their true intentions as well. That's when we learn that the four masterminds behind the entire conspiracy were actually them, along with Anthony Anderson and Shaq. Completely confused by everything that's happening, Cindy asks why they would do something so ridiculous. The answer turns out to be one huge meta-joke aimed directly at the franchise. According to them, they did it because the series kept going without them. For years, they watched the franchise move forward while they were left behind, and now they had come back to take what they believed belonged to them. Things quickly spiral out of control when Ray and Shorty end up turning on Anthony Anderson and Shaq. Between insults, accusations, and arguments about the franchise, the four men start fighting each other. In the end, Ray and Shorty take the other two out. After that, they turn their attention to Brenda and Cindy. Still bitter, they accuse them of moving on without them. Brenda tries to defend herself by saying she only agreed because they offered her a ton of money. Thanks to that money, she was able to buy houses, invest in different ventures, and keep her career going. Cindy responds by saying that she kept working too, and even ended up collaborating with some of Hollywood's biggest stars. After the argument, the original characters finally come back together one last time. For a brief moment, it looks like everything is over, and they've finally moved past their differences. But then Sarah and Martina decide to suggest a new name for the group. Among their ideas are ridiculous names like the Young and the Old, and the Pretty Girls and the Washed-Ups. Instead of laughing it off, the veterans take it as a serious insult. The situation escalates in the most absurd way possible when they end up tying Sarah and Martina up. Then they pour gasoline on them and set them on fire, creating one of the darkest, most over-the-top, and most ridiculous endings in the entire franchise. Afterward, the four of them simply walk away as if nothing happened. As they leave, they keep reassuring each other that they shouldn't feel guilty about what they just did because, according to them, this was always their franchise. And that's how Scary Movie 6 comes to an end. However, the movie still has one last post-credit scene. In it, a narrator's voice introduces a fake movie trailer. The preview is for a film called Brosferatu, an obvious parody of Nosferatu. The voiceover ends by announcing that the movie will be hitting theaters soon on Black Pride Day, wrapping things up with one final ridiculous joke and leaving the audience with one of the weirdest post-credit scenes in the entire franchise. And that's it for today. If you enjoyed this recap, don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. See you next time. See you next.